Hello students, welcome to 13th lecture of structure of atom. In previous lecture we discussed about Bohr's atomic model, but even that model was not perfect. It has some limitation and we also discussed about those limitations. Now we will move on our next point, quantum mechanics. So towards the quantum mechanics model of atom. Now we are actually moving in a different kind of direction. Earlier models were based on classical mechanics, and as discussed earlier, classical mechanics is not applicable to subatomic particles. As for example, if we compare electron and let us say ball, so we can find the trajectory of ball. When we throw a ball, we can predict where it will land. If we know the speed, direction and angle, we can predict the trajectory and we can predict exact time of the location of that ball. Or let us say planetary system. Planets are revolving around the sun, and we know at which time where planets or moon or sun will be present, because they follows classical mechanics rules. But we cannot predict the exact location and exact velocity of electron at the same time, because they do not follow our regular rules. So that's why we have to develop a new theory called quantum mechanics for those subatomic particles. So let us start. So in the view of shortcoming the Bohr's model, attempts were made to develop more suitable and general model of atom. Two important developments which contribute significantly in the formulation of such models were dual behavior of matter and Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Now, dual behavior of matter, we already discussed that electromagnetic radiations behaves like particles as well as wave. Okay, so as mentioned earlier, black body radiation or photoelectric effects are the example of particle behavior of electromagnetic waves, whereas interference and diffraction were wave like properties of electromagnetic radiation. So now we are moving in same direction with our regular matters. That means our regular matters which normally follows particle nature, as for example, if we have a solid piece of metal or plastic or pen, phone, etc., all of these things we know that they are made up of particles and they behaves like particle, but they also have wave properties. That means just like sound wave, our regular day to day life particles, even our bodies, also has wave properties. It is called dual behavior of matter. It contains wave like properties as well as particle like properties. So French physicist de Broglie in 1924 proposed that matter like radiation should also exhibit dual behavior, that is both particle and wave like properties. This means that just as the photons has momentum as well as wavelengths, electrons should also have momentum as well as wavelength. So that means electrons also has their own wavelength, but what is going on here, we do not observe wave like properties from electrons easily. Reason for that is, as the mass of matter increases, wave like properties decreases, but they do have minor wave like properties as well. So that means we can say that our bodies also have our own wavelengths, but they are extremely short to measure, because as the mass increases, wave properties decreases, but still we have some wave properties. So de Broglie forms the analogy, gave the following relationship between wavelength and momentum of material particles, and it is lambda is equal to h upon mv, or it is equal to h upon p, where mv is equal to p. M is the mass of particle and v is velocity, and mass into velocity is equal to momentum. So Planck constant divided by momentum of matter or particle is equal to wavelength of that particle. So de Broglie's prediction was confirmed experimentally when it was found that an electron beam undergoes diffraction, a phenomenon characteristics of waves. So as mentioned earlier, we know that what is diffraction. When waves passes through the small gap called slit, they bend. Okay, it is called diffraction. So electrons also shows these type of diffraction properties. Now let us visualize it. Suppose this is our small slit or gap, and this is our electron. When this electron is moving in this direction, and when this electron passes through this slit, it changes its direction. Initial direction was this straight direction, but when this electron passes through this slit, it randomly moves. Sometimes it will move on right hand side, and sometimes it will move in left hand side. No specific angle or no specific direction. In any direction, that means in left or right, it will move randomly with random angles. That means first time, suppose this was the path of electron, then second time maybe this is the possible path, third time it will move in this direction, fourth time it will move in this direction, and so on. These type of random movements will be observed for the electron. So it also shows diffraction. So this fact has been put to use in making of electron microscope, which is based on a wave-like behavior of electron, just as ordinary microscope utilizes the wave nature of light. So how microscope works? So normal functioning of microscope will be something like this. Suppose this is our subject or object, and when we observe it under the microscope, first our normal wave of light or electromagnetic radiation in visible range will fall on it, then it will reflect. Light will reflect from the surface of our substance, and then it will pass through different lenses, and we can see zoomed image of our object. So what is actually going on? Suppose this is our tiny object, and when light coming through this object passes through the lens, lights will spread out. That means photons will spread out, and we can see comparatively larger sized image of our small object. But problem with this type of microscope is we cannot zoom in, or we cannot increase the size of the object after certain limit, because as the size inside the microscope increases, image quality decreases. Why? Because intensity of light decreases. That means you will get comparatively dull results. As for example, suppose this is our subject, and let us say after the reflection, total 5 photons are coming out of this object. They are bouncing back from this our object. So initially in this region, total number of photons will be 5. Okay, so as we move further away from the object, as you can see, light will spread out. So if we follow the same size, so in this region now we have only 3 photons. If we move even further, you will see we can only see in the same size. That means this is our viewing point or viewing size. So as we move away, or as we increase more and more size of the substance, reflections substance, then number of photons will decrease, and because of less quantity of photons, image quality will be dull, and result will be comparatively less clear. So what is the solution? Our normal microscope normally can zoom up to 400 times. Okay, so that means you will get 400 times larger image of our actual object, but quality of that 400 zoomed image will be comparatively dull. So how can we achieve more than this? That means our normal electronic microscopes, certain electronic microscopes can zoom in even 15 lakh times. That means 15 lakh larger size than actual. So it is very high quality zoom. So how can we achieve this type of zoom? Simple, we can increase the strength of our radiation. If you can increase the strength of radiation, then you can more zoom in. Okay, so as we increase the reflected light, we can strength of reflected light, we can see more clearer image. So electrons have more energy than photons, okay, and we are actually bombarding more energized particles on the objects, and that's why we can see clearer images in electronic microscopes. Okay, so it is based on same principle. In normal microscope we are using electromagnetic radiation, and in electron microscope we are using electrodes, and both of them are following exactly the same principle. So an electron microscope is a powerful tool in modern scientific research because it achieves a magnification of about 15 million times. So it is a very good magnification. So our normal electromagnetic radiations do not have this type of strength, and that's why they have certain limitation. After certain limitation we cannot see the image. So solution is electrons, more powerful particles. So it needs to be noted, according to the de Broglie, every object in motion has a wave character. The wavelengths associated with ordinary objects are so short because of their large masses, their wave properties cannot be detected. Okay, so as the masses increases, wave properties decreases, and wavelengths coming out of those objects decreases, and that's why we are not able to measure them. So wavelengths associated with electrons and other subatomic particles with very small masses can, however, be detected experimentally. So keep in mind, we can do it for very light particles like electrons. We know that electrons have very negligible mass as compared to protons and neutrons. So that's why we can measure the wavelengths coming out of electron, but we cannot even measure it for protons because they have comparatively very high mass to calculate or experimentally observe the wavelengths. So that's why we can find it for electrons experimentally. So results obtained from the following problems prove the points quantitatively. So let us discuss problems mentioned here. So what will be the wavelength of a ball having mass 0.1 kg moving with the velocity of 10 meters per second? So this will be our equation, h upon mv or h upon p. Okay, so right now mass is mentioned and velocity is mentioned, so all you have to do is divide Planck constant with mass and velocity. So that means 6.626 into 10 raised to minus 34 divided by 0.1 kg into 10 raised to 10 meters per second. So it will be 6.626 into 10 raised to minus 34 meters. This is extremely small value. We cannot even measure such small values. And joule is equal to kg into meter square second square inverse. So that means simply some of the values will be cancelled out and only meter unit will left. Okay, so that's why you will get such a very low value. Next is mass of an electron is 9.1 into 10 raised to minus 31 kg if kinetic energy is 3 into 10 raised to minus 25 joules. Calculate its wavelength. So kinetic energy is equal to half of mv square. So v is equal to 2 into kinetic energy upon m raised to 1 by 2. So eventually it will be 812 meters per second, and lambda h upon mv is equal to 8967 into 10 raised to minus 10, which is equal to 896.7 nanometers. So wavelength of the electron is equal to 896.7 nanometer, which is measurable quantity. And last numerical is mentioned for photon. In this numerical, our target is to find mass of photon. So that means it simply represents photons normally behaves like waves, but if they contain mass, it means it must have particle like properties. Okay, so that's why this numerical is mentioned. If you find any confusion regarding to these numericals, feel free to ask. Okay, already calculations are mentioned and it is simple calculation, direct equation is already derived, so that's why we are not discussing it in detail. But if you find any confusion, you can ask me. So now let us move to the next important point, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Now uncertainty, that means in simple thing we are going to discuss in this topic that electrons have quite different type of properties than our daily life objects. You cannot measure exact momentum of electron at the given time with accuracy in position. That means either position will be misplaced or miscalculated, or velocity will be miscalculated. We cannot find exact values of both of them at the same time. So Werner Heisenberg, a German physicist, in 1927 started an uncertainty principle, which is the consequences of dual behavior of matter and radiation. It states that it is impossible to determine simultaneously the exact position and exact momentum or velocity of an electron. Now momentum is equal to mass into velocity. So that means if you cannot find momentum, you cannot find velocity. So you cannot find both of them at the same time for subatomic particles. So mathematically we can express it like this: delta x into delta px is equal to or greater than h upon 4 pi, or delta x into delta m into v x is greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi, or x into delta v is greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi m. Now what it represents? Delta x is uncertainty of position. Delta p is uncertainty of momentum. So as we know, momentum is equal to mass into velocity. So we can rewrite p as mv. Now what delta sign represents? So delta sign represents deviation in measurement. That means suppose let us say on this straight line we are trying to find the location of electron. So when we try to find exact momentum of the, if you know the exact momentum of electron, then you will miscalculate the position of electron. That means you cannot find exact location of electron if you know about the exact momentum of electron. So let us say electron is moving in straight direction, in this direction from let us say left to right side. So if we know the speed of electron or momentum of electron, then let us say our electron is moving with 10 meters per second speed, then you cannot find exact location of electron. You will get rough estimate. That means it will be somewhere between two given points. Okay, so point A to point B, you will get the location of electron like this if you know exact value of p or momentum or velocity. So let us say this location is called xa, second location is called xb, then difference or a gap between these two is called delta x. Okay, so that means uncertainty in location is called delta x. Similarly, in this straight line, suppose you know the exact location of electron, which is let us say here. Okay, so this is the location of electron x. At that time you cannot calculate exact momentum of electron. You will get again a rough estimate of let us say speed of electron is 5 meters per second to 10 meters per second. Okay, so that means from this you will get a range of velocity, and approx or average of this velocity is called delta p. Sorry, momentum will be delta p. Now we know that p is equal to mv, that means momentum is equal to mass into velocity. Now if momentum is a variable, that means you do not have fixed quantity of momentum, that means we actually do not have fixed quantity of velocity, because masses are constant, they do not change. Okay, suppose you have a car having 1000 kg mass and you are moving or driving it, so your speed may vary. It may be 40 kilometers per hour or 50 kilometers per hour, but mass of car will be constant, it do not change. So similarly, if momentum is uncertain, it actually represents velocity is uncertain, not mass. So that means delta p is equal to delta m into v, but m will be constant, so we can rewrite this term as m delta v. Okay, so m will be constant value, so that's why we can shift m on other side and you will get h upon 4 pi m. So total of uncertainty will be greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi m. And for the simplicity we will ignore other possibilities and we will consider delta x into delta v is equal to h upon 4 pi m. Okay, we are ignoring other possibilities. Okay, so if the position of electron is known with the high degree of accuracy, then delta x will be small, then the velocity of electron will be uncertain and the value of delta v will increase because it must be minimum equals to h upon 4 pi m. On the other hand, if the velocity of electron is known precisely, then delta v will be small and the position of electrons will be uncertain, that means delta x will be larger. Thus, if we carry out some physical measurements on the electron's position or velocity, the outcome will be always fuzzy or blurry picture. That means you cannot find exact values of both of them at the same time. The uncertainty principle can be best understood with the help of an example. Suppose you are asked to measure the thickness of the sheet of paper with unmarked meter stick. So obviously result obtained would be extremely inaccurate and meaningless. So that means, suppose your target is to measure thickness of this line and given measurement instrument has only marking between 0 and 1 meter. Okay, and let us say exact value of thickness of this line is 0.01, let us say centimeters, that means tenth of millimeter. Okay, so we are actually try to measure 0.1 millimeter with the help of 1 meter length. Okay, so that means obviously it will be impossible to measure accurately. So we need instrument graduated in the unit smaller than thickness of sheet of paper. So analogously, in order to determine the position of electron, we must use a meter stick calibrated in the unit of smaller than the dimensions of electron. Now as we know, electrons are very small. We cannot even see atoms normally, and electrons are far more smaller than the size of atom. They are extremely small. So keep in mind that electron is considered as a point charge and is therefore dimensionless. Okay, it do not have height, width or deepness. To observe an electron, we can illuminate it with light or electromagnetic radiation. Now light used must have smaller wavelength than the size of electron. It is true for each and every object. If you want to see the object, then applied electromagnetic radiation should be smaller than the size of that object. That means if it is comparatively more, then it will pass through it without any interaction. That means suppose this is the size of our object which we want to see, and this is the size of wavelength of electromagnetic radiation. So as we can see, size of particle is bigger than wavelength. So obviously this wave will interact with our object, and that's why we can see this object with the help of reflection like this. But if applied light is comparatively bigger than the size of our object, then no interaction will occur. That means this type of effect will be observed. No reflection or no interaction with the particle because wavelength is larger than the size of this subject. So as for example, suppose we are using radio wave to measure something or to observe something. So what will happen? This type of situation will occur. We are trying to identify or locate a small stone with radio wave which is comparatively bigger than the size of stone. So no interaction between these two will obtain and you cannot detect the particle. But if you use comparatively smaller wavelength, then it will interact with the particle and we can detect it. So that means if you want to identify or locate electron, then you have to use light having comparatively smaller wavelength than the size of electron. So what is the problem? Problem is, as the size of wavelength decreases, energy increases. That means if you use comparatively smaller wavelength of light, then it will collide with electron, as mentioned in photoelectric effect. When you provide sufficient energized photons, they will knock out electron from the surface, that means from the atoms, and you will get photoelectron. So same situation will happen here. If you trying to find electron with the smaller wavelength containing electromagnetic radiation, as for example like this, okay, we are using a very small wavelength containing electromagnetic radiation to detect this electron. So when this wavelength or wave or light electromagnetic radiation will come in contact with our electron, it will provide energy to this electron, and this electron will be knocked out, or it will move away from its location. That means uncertainty in the location will arise. At the same time, this wave will provide energy to electron, and energy of this wave will provide kinetic energy to this electron. That means it will move faster, movement of electron will be increased. So these high momentum photons will change the direction or energy of electron with the collision. In this process, we no doubt would be able to calculate the position of electron, but we would know very little about the velocity of the electron after the collision. Okay, that means before this type of interaction, suppose we know that the speed of electron is 10 meters per second, but after the collision we can detect the position of electron, but now speed of electron will be changed because of transfer of energy from photon to electron. Okay, that's why uncertainty arises. You cannot measure exact location of electron and exact velocity of electron at the same time. So what is the significance of this uncertainty principle? Now, one of the most implication of the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is it rules out the existence of definite path or trajectories of the electron and other smaller particles. That means initially we learned that our atoms have the same design just like our solar system. That means suppose this is our sun and planets are revolving around it. Okay, let us say this is our earth. Okay, so just like this, electrons are revolving around the nucleus. We learned about atoms initially like this, but actually earth has its own fixed orbit. When planets moves around the sun, they have their own trajectories and their own paths called orbits. Okay, they are revolving around the sun in perfect orbits. But in case of electrons, they are not actually orbiting around the nucleus. They are actually like twinkling stars. That means if initially electron is here, then it will vanish from its location and then it will move directly at new location. Then again it will be removed from this location and it will appear at new location. That means we can say that it is a like teleporting thing. If glass is placed on a table, then instantly it will disappear and it will be appear at somewhere else. Okay, location at somewhere else, just like teleportation. These electrons are actually twinkling around the nucleus in specific region called orbits. So the trajectory of an object is determined by the location and velocity at various moments. If we know where a body is at particular instant, and if we know its velocity and the force acting on it at that instant, we can tell where the body would be after some time. Just like our solar system, or suppose example of ball. When we throw the ball, if we know all of these things, then we can predict at which moment it will be at which location. So we therefore conclude that the position of the object and velocity is fixes its trajectory, since for subatomic objects such as an electron, it is not possible to simultaneously determine the position and velocity because of uncertainty principle at a given instant. To an arbitrary degree of precision, it is not possible to talk the trajectories of electron. The effect of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is significant only for motion of microscopic objects and is negligible for that macroscopic objects. Macroscopic, that means larger in size. So this uncertainty is only applicable for subatomic particles or very lightweight particles. It is meaningless for macro or larger sized particles. This can be seen from the following example. Some examples are mentioned for easy understanding. So if uncertainty principle is applied to an object of mass, say about a milligram, 10 raised to minus 6 kilogram, then delta V into delta X is equal to h upon 4 pi m. So let us, if we calculate, then you will get 10 raised to minus 28 meter inverse second inverse. So that means value of uncertainty is extremely small for substance having 1 milligram mass. Okay, 10 raised to minus 28. So it is comparatively very small value and we can easily ignore it. Okay, so that means for comparatively heavier particles, uncertainty is meaningless. 10 raised to minus 28 is extremely small value. It do not affect our calculations. Okay, so value of V in delta V into delta X obtained is extremely small, and that's why it is insignificant. So for objects having comparatively more mass, let us say milligram sized or heavier object, the uncertainties are hardly of any real consequences. On the other hand, microscopic objects like electrons do have significance for this uncertainty. As for example, mass of electron is 9 into 10 raised to minus 31. So let us put this value in our equation and you will get 10 raised to minus 4. So from this uncertainty value, if we try to find the exact location of electron, say the uncertainty of this is only 10 raised to minus 8 meter, then the uncertainty in delta V in velocity will be 10 raised to 4 meters per second. So it is very large value. So that means if uncertainty in velocity is 10 raised to 4, that means 10,000 meters per second. So it is extremely large deviation in uncertainty of velocity. So which is so large that the classical picture of electrons moving in Bohr's orbital cannot hold good. It therefore means that the precise statement of the position and momentum of electrons have to be replaced by the statement of probability. That means we cannot say electrons are moving around the nucleuses, but we can say that they have comparatively higher probability to find around the nucleus in certain regions. Okay, if we can find the more probability of electron to find in certain region, we will call it orbits. So this is what happened in the quantum mechanical model of atom. That means atoms do not have revolving electrons around it. Actually, electrons has probability in certain area around the atom, and comparatively higher probability, and in certain region they have comparatively less probability. But you cannot say electron will be present at the certain spot around the atom at given time. Okay, we can say that they are actually twinkling around the atom at given point. If it is present at given time and given location, after certain time it will appear somewhere else. So quantum mechanics is quite hard to understand because it disobeys our regular understanding of physics. So that's why it is comparatively hard to understand, and subatomic particles can be explained using quantum mechanic rules. That's why we have to study it.